Hello all, welcome to and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to go into part 2 of a Growspace update. Now for this update, we're going to talk about my Phalaenopsis, which I primarily grow on the top shelves, which will include the upper shelves for my novelty Phals and warmer growers, and the middle shelves for the most intermediate growers. Now, just to give you some specifics on what that looks like, the upper shelves have an ambient temperature of mainly 73 to 75, but the very top shelf is going to hit highs of between 77 to 80 on average here in the growing season and through the summer. And that middle shelf, same ambient temperature, 73 to 75, but it just lingers more around 75, a lot more steady. Now here during the springtime, we have lots of vegetative growth and blooms, but of course mostly that vegetative growth going on. So this is probably going to be quite a long video because I'm touching every plant that's growing and every plant is growing. Currently the grow lights are set to excuse me, about 13.5 hours now. They'll be moving up to somewhere between 15 to 16 by the time the middle of the summer hits. And let's go ahead and move on to the top shelves here. So of course, again mentioning, we're starting with the summer bloomers, but here, because I have a heat mat set up, they do bloom all year round. In addition to the heat mats, they're also on metal trays which do hold the heat and provide a drastic, well, not drastic, but do provide a temperature drop at night because that metal cools as fast as it heats down. Now, as we go along, I'm going to name the parents of most of my primary hybrids, which means that if there are two parents in the background, I will let you know what they are. For the rest of the hybrids that are a bit more complex, we'll just stick with the name and where they come from. So let's go ahead and get right into our first shelf here. The first Phal, of course, is a novelty hybrid, Phalaenopsis Pink Bee Cultivar Perfume. This was a 2021 purchase from Norman's. Beautiful flowers and they're lovely and fragrant. This one does have equestris in the background, so the branching and spiking habit is quite vigorous. The next Phal is Phal Hawaii Dragon Girl crossed with Violacea, a 2020 purchase from High Desert Orchids. This was my first novelty purchase. It doesn't have a registered name. The flowers are cute and tiny with short branching spikes. And right now I do have 3 blooms and they're very fragrant. It's a fruity floral scent. The next Phal is Tangshin Fly Eagle, a 2021 purchase from Big Leaf Orchids. This one's a pretty popular color changing Phal. It has Tetraspis in the background, the C1 variation or cultivar, so the color does change based on how warm or how cool the climate is. The next Phal is a species, Cornucervi. This was a 2021 purchase from Orchid Classics. It's very small, but the thick leaves really appeal to me as well as the fat roots. I can't wait for the blooms. It should be a small cluster of brown waxy flowers. Not sure if it's going to be fragrant, but something to look forward to. The next plant, Phal Jengmin Jazz, a 2021 purchase from Big Leaf Orchids. This one's weird, kind of can't figure it out. Has a new small spike that kind of stalled. The old spike has had no growth for months, and this new leaf looks like I have improper watering going on. So I'm still just trying to figure this baby out. The next one is Phal Fenchi Kunriawati. This was a purchase from Norman's in 2020. It's a Violacea crossed with the Pulchra primary hybrid. Beautiful violet, spicy, fragrant blooms. I love this plant. I'm not a fan of the fragrance, but I am a fan of the bloom clusters and how they clump together. The next Phal is Jennifer Palermo, This was also a 2020 Norman's purchase. I bought this soon after the Finchi Kun Riawati. This one is a Tetraspis crossed with the Bellina. What's interesting is that you would think it was a Tetrabell, but the cross was made when Bellina was considered a Violacea, which is why the name is Jennifer Palermo. Beautiful flowers with purple tinges, yellow tinges at the end, and a nice floral fragrance. Next, we have my seedling purchase from Big Leaf Orchids in 2021. This is the Gigantea. It's gonna become a huge plant, but I have a lot of time for it. Right now, it's putting out a new leaf. It did lose one immediately upon arrival, so it's bouncing back pretty good. I do know it's gonna grow fairly large, so I'm just giving myself all the patience in the world with this plant. The next one is Tabasco Tex Junior. I call this Junior because my original Tabasco Tex came with 2 plants, and when I repotted it, this one came loose from it. So I plan on actually giving it away to a coworker of mine, so I'm going to spike it and gift it to her. And last on this shelf, we have Matuo Diamond Canary, which was also a Big Leaf Orchids purchase from 2021. This one, sad plant, it spiked twice and I broke both of the spikes. It's currently growing a new leaf and probably mad at me, so I'm just letting it go and seeing where it goes this time. We're going back into its spiking season, so it's probably gonna spike in the summer again. And let's go ahead and move on to the shelf next to here. So here, just to the right, we have more warm growing Phals, novelty species, and jumping right into my Bronze Maiden, a 2021 purchase from Norman's, one of my favorites. It's crossed with the Schilleriana and a Manii. The Schilleriana is a specific silver leaf variation, and the Manii is a specifically black cultivar. So the plant has a very special appeal with regard to darker blooms and very silver leaves. Next is another primary hybrid, Princess Kaiulani, also a 2021 Norman's purchase. Love the art shade blooms on this small plant. It's a cross between Amboinensis and Violacea, 2 very beautiful, fragrant, spring and summer blooming Phalaenopsis. The next one, Matuo Gigan Dragon Cultivar number 11, a 2021 purchase from Big Leaf Orchids. This appealed to me because of the round, full leaves due to the hybridization of Gigantea in the parentage. So this was a cross with a novelty phal and a Gigantea species. Next, we have Yafan Perfume Cultivar Red, another 2021 purchase, but from Norman's. This one is a pretty complex hybrid, beautiful red, fragrant flowers that kind of remind me of mango starburst-like fragrance. And the Equestrius in the background as well as Venosa do give it a interesting spiking and flower color habit. Next, primary hybrid Guadalupe Pineda, a purchase from Norman's in 2021 as well. This primary hybrid of Bellina and Amboinensis sort of reminds me of the Princess Kaiulani, but rather than that spicy Violacea scent, this scent is a bit more sweet and fruity. Next we have Queen Beer Red Sky. This is a standard phal cross with a species phal called a Pulcherrima, which is known to have a very strong, straight up spike that grows in almost 90-degree angle. I do really love the magenta, deep magenta blooms of this plant, and it's actually given me a second spike here. Next, we have the parent plant of Tabasco Tex when I showed you the Junior. So I originally bought this plant because it has the Princess Kaiulani in the background, and at the time, Princess Kaiulani wasn't available. So I was super excited to find out that Norman in 2021 sent me 2 plants, and I've Experience the blooms, one of my favorite scents here, reminds me of Starburst. Next we have Phal Pinlong Cherish, also a Norman's purchase from 2021. This one's a Schilleriana hybrid, and it actually takes both traits from the parent with regard to scent and foliage. I really love the small blooms and mottled leaves. Next, we also have another mottled orchid. This one is the Pulcherrima marmorata, a Phalaenopsis that used to be classified as a Doritis. It's a very small plant. There's actually 4 plants in here, and it gave me quite a few spikes last year. I'm not a fan of the blooms, but I do really love the leaves, so I don't know if I'm gonna let this plant spike ever again. I might just houseplant it all the way through. So let's go ahead and move down to our standard Phalaenopsis. So moving on to this bottom shelf here, middle shelf here, just under the top shelf, we have the standard Phals. Here we have an even temperature of 75 degrees and the most medium light here for the growing Phals. Now with regard to the middle shelf, I try my best not to crowd the plants, but you know, the habit just sent you down these rabbit holes. And with regard to rabbit hole, we'll go ahead and jump right into the Phal that started it all. Back in July of 2020, I did receive a big white Phalaenopsis for my anniversary. Now, I call her Phal Ruby. I don't know what's behind the parentage, and yes, Phal Ruby, even though she's white. But she was the experiment plant where I experimented with different levels of light, different mediums with the ratios of moss to bark, as well as humidity levels, which really don't play too much a factor in my environment. But there you have it. Moving on to the next plant, we do have Phal Dorian. I don't know what the real name of this Phal is, but I do call him Phal Dorian. Purchased from Whole Foods last year, spur of the moment, doing fairly well in my environment, and as you can see, lots of vegetative growth. The next Phal we have is Fuller Sunset from Norman's in 2021. Big yellow blooms, hasn't bloomed yet, and I lost all the roots and leaves upon arrival. But as you can see, it has a pretty vigorous bounce back game going on here. The next plant that's coming up is the Sogo Lawrence, a purchase from Norman's as well last year. I love the blooms on this. They're sunset colors, big yellow gold blooms with pink accents and white center. Next, we're gonna go with a mini Louis Lynn Claire Galaxy, a purchase from Norman's in 2022. This is gonna be a mini Harlequin, meaning that it'll have these polka dots, purple colored on a nice white background. Hasn't bloomed, so we're just waiting on the vegetative growth here in the spring season. Next, we have Phal Crystal Veil. This was a purchase from Norman's in 2021. It's an Amabilis hybrid, so there's a mini standard Phal cross with a species Amabilis. It's a pretty vigorous plant. It's bloomed twice and the spikes are very, very long, tiny white blooms. Next, we have Phal Sara Lee ID cultivar. It's an Amboinensis hybrid, so it's a novelty Phal that's been crossed with an Amboinensis species. It has beautiful pink blooms with yellow on the edges, and it smells like cheesecake. I got it from Big Leaf Orchids back in 2021. And as you can see, vegetative growth. The next, we have another mini from Hausermann's in 2021. This one doesn't have a registered name. It's called Taida Little Pretty Times Zuma Pixie. One of the only minis that survived the haul. So it's just maintaining. The blooms don't last too long for me. I don't know if it's the parentage or my environment, but it's going, so it's staying. Next, we have one of my favorites, the Sogo Vivian. It's the pretty popular variegated orchid with the yellow variegation you see there in the corner. It has the prettiest leaves and super cute blooms that are very consistent. every time I cut a spike, there's a new spike popping out. I think it has to do with the Doritis in the parentage that has now been reclassified as a Phalaenopsis. So you may see this plant labeled as a Doritinopsis on older variations. Next, we have Phals Silverlight, the definition of a department store phal. Don't want to say where I got it from, but it's from a display somewhere. And it's a very, very, very big plant, lots of leaves, hasn't bloomed yet, but it should be a big white phal. It's a super continuous grower. It just keeps going, so I'm sure it'll bloom this season in the fall. Next to it, on the other side of the humidifier, we have a world popular favorite orchid. This was a purchase from Big Leaf in 2021, and it's the Mini Mark. It's a very popular mini, probably the most popular mini. Mine only has one bloom, but I just love those orange lips. I'm not cutting the spike until it dries. I think I struggle with finding out how to water this plant, but it seems to be doing well now. The next plant that we have up is going to be a Phalaenopsis from Whole Foods. This one is, I call it Phal Harley because it has a beautiful harlequin design on it. So it's a white bloom with the yellow and purple spotting. I have it on the bottom shelf only because I don't have room for it on the top shelf with the way that it grows, with that flat appeal. Next, we have Schilleriana. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one because I actually have a video coming up collaborating with a couple of fellow YouTubers. So I'll show it to you, but there's going to be a video coming up in detail about this. It's one of my favorite phals. It's huge and it's just put on a keiki for me. So stay tuned for that video that'll be coming up because it'll be pretty exciting and you'll get to see other people's Schillerianas too, and hopefully those big blooms because I don't have it in bloom right now. Let's go ahead and wrap up this video. So there you have it. There's basically the full collection of my Phalaenopsis currently going into the spring season. Now I did leave a few out, such as my large Unimax that I want to do a video on unique spiking, and my Sogo Rose, my red Phalaenopsis, which keeps on blooming, but I know something's wrong with the roots, and we'll get into that in another video coming up soon. With that, I'll leave you with my social media handles. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at The Right Path. That's TheRightPath. I'll see you all in the next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day, guys.